Struggling to structure your novel? Well, you're not alone. Building a story that keeps readers turning the pages can feel like trying to solve a puzzle or a Rubik's Cube, especially if you're stuck in the weeds of world building or character arcs. But what if there were just 5 key scenes that could unlock your story's full potential, no matter what genre you're writing? That's exactly what we're diving into today. I'm joined by Kristina Stanley, founder of Fictionary and the School for Writers and Editors, and she's here to show us how these 5 key scenes work differently. Plus, she'll share the free tools and smart strategies you can use to bring your book to life, whether you're a beginner or a pro. Welcoming to the podcast for the second time, Kristina Stanley. How you doing, Kristina?
Hi, Dale. I feel very famous now because I'm here for my second time.
Second
Yay!
time, yeah. You go for 5, that's when you get the gold jacket. It's going to be this color right here. So,
Oh, I want one. I want one. You got to send it my way. So we got to work on that. Very important.
boy, we have a lot of ground to cover today. And I know I'd just love to sit here and just jib jab like, old friends can do. But today we got to kind of walk it back. And I think, I'm making my big pivot over into fiction. So when you presented this idea of these 5 keys to a good storyline, I thought, let's go ahead. Let's work on this one. So let's start with the basics. What exactly are these 5 key scenes and why do they matter so much for story structure?
Okay. So story structure is a thing of beauty. It will explode your mind with ideas. So if you have a little bit of pressure to follow a little bit of structure, you can be super artistic around it. It's important because when we talk about commercial fiction, successful fiction basically follows the same structure across the board. And so you're going to find 5 scenes in it. Readers love them, readers resonate with them, and there's a reason for every scene, and there's a reason why the book won't work if those scenes aren't there. And so super cool, been around since the beginning of storytelling. It's nothing I invented. It is just there. So I'm just going to simplify it down to 5 scenes. So how about that?
Yeah, so you didn't invent this. This is something you've learned and you're passing it down. So, let's kind of dive just a little bit more into these 5 key elements here, these 5 key scenes. So can you take me through like one at a time and start it out with that very first one?
Okay, you can tell I'm excited. All right, so I just love talking about this. So it's called the story arc.
Okay.
5 scenes. So the very first scene is called the inciting incident. And all this scene is doing, you have a protagonist for your story. That protagonist has a goal. And if they fail at that goal, something bad will happen. That's consequences. And so when you're looking at your story, you're looking for, let's just look at a murder mystery because that's super easy. So we'll say the detective is the protagonist. The detective's goal is to find the killer. And if she doesn't find the killer, then somebody else will be killed. So that's the story. So what happens in a mystery novel, for example, for an inciting incident, the detective world gets shaken up. Either they get assigned to the case or they discover the dead body. Something along those lines, there's something new. And if it doesn't change their ordinary world, the story's boring. So if you take out an inciting incident, so you have a protagonist, nothing changes. It's just the ordinary world. So, hi, Dale. Did you have a good day? Yeah, you're having coffee, and then you took your dog for a walk, and then maybe you had some lunch, and now you're reading a book. Okay. If someone doesn't show up at your door with a murder weapon, it's a problem, and your
Yeah.
book goes nowhere. It's just now we're just watching the ordinary world. And sometimes when you're reading a book and you think, nothing's happening. It's because there's no inciting incident. Nothing happened to shake up the protagonist's world. So there's no story, just not there.
And so that needs to be front loaded, that inciting incident. We need to get it right out the gate in order to keep our readers hooked.
So now this depends on the genre.
Okay.
So a fantasy genre, a mystery novel, it could happen even before the book. So say the inciting incident is in Fourth Wing for Violet. Her inciting incident is for people who know the story, is when her mother tells her she's not going to be a little scribe working in a library that she's trained for her whole life. She is now going to be in dragon school. That's where she's going. She's going to be a warrior. That's her inciting incident, happens before the story starts. In a romance, you can't have that. The inciting incident in a romance is when the love interests meet. It has to be on page. People want to see it. You're not reading a romance because that happened 2 months ago and now we're starting with something else.
Yeah.
Must be in the scene or in the book. And typically before 15% of your novel, even better if it's before 10. And that's just based on technology, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
When you publish your book on Amazon or anywhere else, typically there's a 10% free sample. And if you can sneak that inciting incident in before then, you've got the person hooked to buy your book. Mm,
Genius.
mhm, mhm. Yep.
So we've hit that first key. What comes after that inciting incident now?
So now we move on to plot point one. So we're going to ignore all the stuff in between. Of course, there's scenes in between.
Right.
But plot point one is where the protagonist accepts the story goal. And so what that means, if we've got our detective novel, their goal is to solve the murder, they accept that they're going to do it. So maybe they don't want the case because it's there's some political reason. It's solving, their wife's sister is the suspect, or it doesn't matter. But so they're inciting incident, they find out about the murder. Plot point one, they have to accept they're actually going to solve it. And that's their moment. If they don't, there's no story. So if the protagonist doesn't accept the story goal, they're back to ordinary life. It's like, oh yeah, look, that happened and I did nothing about it. They have to accept the story goal. That comes between the end of Act 1, beginning of Act 2 in that area. Comes around 25%, 20 to 30. These are loose, guidelines. You don't have to follow it exactly, but somewhere by around 25%, your protagonist has went, yep, I'm going to accept this story goal and the story can move forward. And then they start having goal attempts and fail at a bunch of them, but that's okay.
You brought up something, and I want to kind of walk it back before we get to that third key. Talking about the three-act story structure. Just very briefly, could you touch on that three-act story structure? And of course, you mentioned percentages, because I've always been led to believe that you obviously want to have Act 1 light, Act 2 lot heavier, Act 3 light, just like the first.
Hmm. Yeah, and so now it's difficult to write by because you have Act 1, which is the first quarter of your book, it's the setup.
Yeah.
Then you have Act 2, which goes from 25 to 75%. It's 50% of your book,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So it takes you a long way through of all their goal attempts and all the external pressures and all this stuff is happening before they get to the plot point 2, which I'll describe in a moment.
Yeah.
And then we're at their lowest of their low and they're going to head into the climax. Then you're into Act 3. Well, that makes Act 2 really big. So if you split it between an inciting incident, the middle plot, or sorry, the plot point 1, middle plot point 2, climax, it's much easier to get your head around when you're trying to write the book.
Yeah.
And you'll get that big middle, this is too big. I can't, it's too big.
The
Panic.
marathon in the middle. Yep.
So I don't like that. I like littler bits, inch by inch, life's a cinch. So you just keep going to these little bits. And then you have a book.
I love it. Okay, so now we've got the three-act story structure, because I wanted to make sure we clarified those 5 keys we're talking about and separate it from the three-act structure so people aren't confused, because they're like, wait, is she just inventing a new story structure or anything like that? So we got that out of the way. So we got first and the second key. What is our third key that we can keep that momentum going?
So the third one is the middle plot point. And this is when you take your protagonist. So at plot point 1, they've accepted the story goal. And then things happen and they react, and things happen and they react. They're busy, 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 going all over the place. Something happens in the middle of the plot point to change the story direction. And the protagonist gets proactive. They start deciding, I'm going to do this so I can find this, so I can move to the next level. They still get it wrong, but now they're driving the story. And the reason they have to make a switch from just stuff happening to them, as opposed to them taking care of it, is if they don't, they're all over the place and you'll never get to the end. They can't have a path there. And you as the author have to know what that path is. And so the protagonist gets proactive, proactive, and then they drive the story. And then they make a lot of mistakes and the reader has compassion for them because, oops, tried stuff and didn't work so well, and it drives them to plot point 2, which is bad.
I'd imagine there are probably some authors out there that might get really stuck on what that path, what that direction is going to be. Do you have any kind of advice that would help somebody flesh that out
Yep.
instead of staring at that blinking cursor and just stuck
Hmm. Okay.
forever on that third key?
So you're at the middle plot point, and typically, okay, we'll look at, I'm going to do mystery, romance, and fantasy because they're
Mhm.
very clear examples.
Yeah.
So in a mystery, the detective gets a clue, but oops, they misinterpret it and they go in the wrong direction. And so they start driving the story over here, and you're going to have to bring them back.
Mhm.
And so they think they've had a victory, but it's actually not a victory because they didn't quite understand it,
Oh.
right? Or the middle plot point, there's a second death, so they didn't prevent it. So there's something else going on here. Or there's a new suspect, or a suspect who they were sure did it. Oh, okay. 100% alibi wasn't them. Now they've got to drive in a different way.
Mm.
In a romance, goes one of two ways. One of the love interests finds out something about the other one, and it's either true or false. And it either then, all right, you're not very nice, so I am leaving you. I'm going to start my way and move away from you because I can't put my heart on the line. It's not going to happen. Or I'm all in, but oops, it's the wrong way to do this. And so it causes problems. So that's the romance. In fantasy, interesting enough, what typically happens is the protagonist is put in a position, particularly in an epic fantasy, of there's two warring factors. They have to choose sides. They got to make that decision. And so I'm proactively going to side A. Mm, might have been the wrong choice, might have been the right choice, but you set up a lot of conflict for the rest of the story because now the protagonist has chosen sides. So a little bit you have to know your genre, but
Mhm.
once you know some fundamental things, you can start brainstorming around that of, all right, well, who's in my novel? I'm writing a fantasy that I've got two sides. How can I set it up so now the protagonist has to pick one or the other, or they have to trust somebody they don't want to trust, or things like this.
Excellent. This is really insightful, and forgive me if I ask questions out of order,
Okay,
because I have so many that comes along. But we've hit
it's fun.
the first three keys. What is that fourth key? How do we transition on over there? We've picked that path.
Yep.
Now our protagonist is on that path. What comes next?
So what comes next is plot point two, and I love plot point two. Now, what I want to say about this is it can be one scene, it can be multiple scenes. All of them. They don't have to be, you're not, it doesn't mean it's a scene or a chapter. These events can happen. And you're the artist, you can decide how they're going to happen. But plot point two does two things. So it could be in the same scene, could be two scenes. And the first one is it pushes the protagonist to their lowest point in the story. So in a romance, they break up. In a mystery, they arrest the wrong person or somebody else is killed because of their actions, something like that. In a fantasy, they kill somebody with their magic by accident. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Right? So they're
Yeah.
at their lowest of their low. And I love Fourth Wing for that because in it, Violet, who's the main character, she's tried the whole novel not to kill anyone. She wants to live every day, but she doesn't want to kill anyone. And then, of course, she does. And it crushes her. She doesn't want to be a person who kills other people, and now she is. But what's really important, this is what most people know that about plot point two. But the other thing, the reason you can't pull out plot point two is they also get the final piece of information they need to achieve their story goal in the climax. Without that, they can't get to the climax. If you leave that piece of information too late, like the scene before the climax, then the reader thinks, well, that was coincidental, and it ruins the book. It's not good enough. It has to be earlier enough that now the protagonist has something they need to do in order to win in the climax.
Mhm.
And without that, it's a bit of a letdown at the end. And so plot point two has to have that final. And after that, the protagonist can't learn anything new. They can't have any more clues about the murder mystery. They can't get, oh, I have a new magic power. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's done at plot point two. That's the last chance. And now you got to work hard, be very creative how you're going to get them to the climax.
How obvious do you need to be about that element that's going to get our protagonist to the end. So can I do like a Chekhov's gun? Gum? Yeah, it's Chekhov's gum.
Or gum. Or gum. That's good.
Which, by the way, it's probably important we do address what Chekhov's gun is as well, because I'm just kind of tossing it out there, and I think any new authors might go, Chekhov's gun. Is this something to do with Star Trek? No, it's not.
But it could be. It could be. But it's so this is exactly what you should be talking about because
Okay.
say, for example, with Fourth Wing, Violet uses lightning in plot point two to kill somebody.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't actually know until that point that that's her power.
Okay.
But earlier in the book, all of the other cadets get a power. She knows she has to have one. It's coming. There's hints all the way along. There's thunder, lightning, storms, things happening. Because of her, she doesn't see it, but the reader will. And so the Chekhov's gun part is, if you plant a gun at the beginning of the story, you have to use it at the end,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is a little bit the opposite where if you use something at the end, you got to go back and plant it at the beginning. Like it has to feel natural
Yeah.
to the story. It doesn't have to be in your face. It can be subtle.
Mm-hmm.
The goal is, and the reader won't even pick up on it. They won't know it, but they will know if the scene before the climax, you're like, hey, here's a new magic power. No,
Right.
right? No. Well, that's
Like,
cheating.
where did this come from? Yeah. It's
How could she have a power? She's not even in that group. That makes no sense to me at all, right? So it has to be earlier so the reader, it's set up. You got your little breadcrumbs, then it appears, and then you go.
very
So
interesting. I had a beta reader one time, had read some of my fiction work, and it was so funny. He called me out on that specific thing where he was in a mall. There was big thing that kerfluffle just happens, and there's a display model car, and he's like, that car wasn't mentioned before. What? You just put some guns in there too as well, so he's got the protection because you just threw this out of nowhere. It's funny. I had to go back and place it back in there, and I think when I learned Chekhov's gun, and I recommend all authors look that up if you want a better understanding because then it'll start to make more sense. So with this fourth key, we're gonna set them up with something that's going to finish up the story and wrap that up. Does it need to be a Chekhov's gun or does it need to be blatant? How does that work?
So it doesn't need to be a Chekhov's gun, but it needs to be something that's natural to your story.
Okay.
So in a romance, maybe they find something out, so they break up, but then they discover something that, that wasn't actually true, and they have to rethink why did they break up, right? But it has to have been hinted at before in the story. It can't just come out of their imagination. Something has to happen to trigger that, whatever that is. And the same with in a mystery, if there's a clue that comes out, it can't come like, oh look, there it is on the sidewalk.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, I just walked by it. The detective has to earn that. They have to find it. They can't just, right? They have to earn it.
Yep.
And then you can move forward.
It's got to be earned because otherwise your readers are going to tune out, or for that matter, your beta readers are going to beat you up.
Yeah, nobody likes that.
Very good. So we've burned through 4 of those keys.
Yep.
How do we just tie this all up to make
Okay.
a very solid story structure?
So do you remember? It's only been 10 minutes.
Right.
When I said, you might not, but when I said at the very beginning, before you start playing around with these 5 scenes, who's your protagonist, what's their story goal, and what's at stake, right?
Mhm.
In the climax, you must show, did they or did they clearly not achieve that story goal? If you address anything else, like a big car scene and lots of blow-ups and it's very exciting and a whole bunch of vampires appear and whatever, but it doesn't answer that question, it's not a climax scene. It must. The reader needs to know the story's over. Even if you're writing a series, there has to be a goal for your book and your series. Can't get to say, oh, I'm writing a series, I don't have to do it. You do. For each book, there must be a climax related to the goal for that book in the series. So the reader is satisfied that the protagonist either clearly did or didn't achieve their story goal. It's a must.
Good stuff. We've gone through these 5 keys. Now my mind's thinking, okay, Kristina, this is great. You're an experienced author. You probably can just open up a document and you're going to freaking rattle that stuff off like a pro. For
Sure.
newbie fiction authors like myself or anybody else out there, what are some free and premium tools that we can look into that we can reel in and dial in those 5 key features? Obviously, there's one software you're going to need to mention. so,
Yes.
but
Yes.
I'd love to
Well,
know some free and premium options, and as well as any kind of resources that you can recommend that maybe I can learn a little bit more.
sure. So, first of all, I have to invite everybody to fictionary.circle.so. And this is our Fictionary School for Writers and Editors. And we're all about kindness. If you come in, we're super nice, super friendly. You will love being there. And the goal of this community is to teach as much as we can for free. We have a paid portion of the community where we do 6-week courses and things like that. But we have at least once a week we have free events, and we call them classes because we actually teach in them. So once you're in the community, there's it's basically we'll pick a topic like this or a point of view or 5 scenes specifically in a mystery or how do you start your series, whatever it is. And we have our experts who we've taught teach those classes. And really what we're trying to do is help as many writers as we can, and run our business at the same time, which is called Fictionary. And with Fictionary, we have software to help perform structural edits on your manuscript, or if you're writing from scratch, we have outlining software to start at the beginning and structure your novel properly. But the real my theory is if you understand the story theory and you're given actionable advice, like do this today on your manuscript, in this part of your manuscript, you can actually go forward and really just write your best novel that you possibly can.
Nice stuff. All right, boy, you've covered a lot of ground. We've gone through our time like we normally do. It's gone so fast. But I already warned you ahead of time that I was going to be doing
Okay,
this the lightning round.
I'm ready.
It's time for our 2-minute lightning round where we dive into rapid fire questions designed to spark quick, honest, and spontaneous answers. Each question is aimed at giving viewers and listeners fresh insights into my guest's unique experiences and personality, all with a twist of fun. Our guest has 2 minutes to answer each question or say pass and move on. Expect candid thoughts, fast-paced reflections, and maybe a few surprises. Now, Kristina, there's no pressure, but Dana Claire got a perfect 20 questions with
Oh,
18 seconds to spare. She's got the
okay.
top score, so no pressure. Just do the best that you can. Obviously,
I,
any.
I
Go
have
ahead.
2 minutes total.
2 minutes total. Yep.
Total. And how
Yep.
many questions?
20 questions.
Holy moly. Okay.
You got it.
Okay.
So if
Okay.
you've got it ready, I'm going to go ahead
Okay.
and start the timer, and it's going to work like Family Feud, where I'm going to read the question and then I'll start the timer. So that way I'm not eating into your time. Here we go. What's the last book you couldn't put down?
Oh, see, now I'm panicking. What couldn't I put down? I'm going to say Fourth Wing.
Coffee or tea while writing?
Coffee.
If you could have dinner with any author, living or dead, who would it be?
Oh, who would it be? Stephen King.
Favorite genre to read?
Fantasy.
What's your dream travel destination?
Bahamas.
One word to describe your writing process.
Structured.
Most underrated book every author should read.
Oh. Ah. Okay. I have no clue. I can't answer. I gotta pass. I don't
Favorite writing snack?
know. Apples.
If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Happiness. Giving happiness.
Biggest pet peeve when editing or reviewing a manuscript?
Laziness.
What book genre would you never try writing?
Horror.
Pen and paper or typing?
Typing.
The best piece of advice you've ever received?
Inch by inch, life's a cinch.
If you weren't an author, what would you be?
Dog trainer.
Do you prefer plotting your book in detail or winging it?
Combination.
If your life were a book, what genre would it be?
Romance.
Hardcovers, paperbacks, or ebooks?
All three.
What's the strangest place you found writing inspiration?
Oh, the strangest place. On a boat.
Best part of being an author?
Imagination.
One word to describe where you see your career in 5 years.
Hugely successful. Oh, that's 2 words. Successful.
Most underrated book every author should read.
Underrated. Oh, you came back to that. Every author should
And
read.
that's time. So you got
Oh,
19 of the 20.
oh, I panicked. See, now I'm going to say The Wedding Date by
Ah,
Julie.
there you go. Yes, you
I,
got it in. You got it in for sure. So,
and only because it's a fantastically structured romance book that
yeah,
just should be read.
very good. I ask you the same thing I'm going to ask all of my guests, which is what advice do you have for aspiring authors and self-publishers out there?
Don't give up. You can do this. It's something that takes time and hard work, but find your group, your community that helps you along and just keep going because you'll get there.
And of course, Kristina, how can people get a hold of you? And you got some information about Fictionary, right? Where can people find out more details about that?
So our website is fictionary.co, not com, fictionary.co. And I know. And our community is fictionary.circle.so. So you can reach me on either. I'm in the community every single day, every day of the year. So you can find me quite easily by just, looking at my name there.
Audio listeners are probably going, why did she comment like that? Because I look to the side and your lower third says fictionary.com. Horrible host. Horrible. Never come back here again. Kristina, it is always a pleasure having you on. I just really do appreciate it. Is there any last minute words that you'd like to share here with my listening audience?
Yes, if you want to enjoy life, be like Dale. Happy, energetic, enthusiastic about what he's doing, and just a love for it. And that is the way to go through your day.
Well,
Guaranteed, make you happy. That's my advice.
You are sweet as the day is long. I appreciate it. And this day is pretty stinking long, let me tell you. So, Kristina, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to go ahead and boot you off here. And folks, make sure that you go over, take a look at more details about Fictionary. I actually did a full review video of it. Fictionary.co. Go on over there. Their community is amazing. Do not miss out on it. Thank you so much, Kristina.